When most people think of Croatia today, they probably think of this. But Croatia's Adriatic coast only makes up a relatively small percent of its total territory. Of Croatia's 3.9 million people, around 70% of them live inland or outside of the coastal region. Croatia is much more than just a Mediterranean country. So what does it have to offer besides its famous Adriatic coast, which draws as many as 20 million recorded tourist arrivals per year, and where rising prices and endless crowds contradict the country's now defunct tagline, the Mediterranean as it once was? Well, today we're about as far away from the coastline as you can be in Croatia. I'm Joe Meyer, this is Joe's Compass, and I'm here in one of Croatia's easternmost counties, Osijek-Baranja. So come with me as I check out this unique and charming part of the region known as Slavonia. Now, one of the most glaring differences between Western Croatia and the eastern part of Slavonia around the regional capital Osijek is how flat it is. While the eastern Adriatic coast in Croatia and neighboring Montenegro is marked by huge limestone bluffs jutting right down into the sea, Osijek-Baranja County is part of the Pannonian Basin, which spans across 6 different countries, including Croatia's neighbors Hungary and Serbia. But Croatia's eastern Slavonian piece of Pannonia is mainly marked by flat lowlands with a few scattered hills. In my opinion, it's this flatness that really serves as a common theme for everything Osijekan and Slavonian, and helps explain how and why the region is the way it is, and why it's attractive for anyone looking to explore other parts of Croatia. While the endlessly flat Slavonian plains might seem boring to some people, its flatness has given it a special character. The lack of mountains has made it susceptible to various invaders and population movements throughout history. But also, its flatness and abundance of lakes and rivers ensures that it's highly productive and fertile, with the broader Slavonian region making up about 45% of all of Croatia's agricultural land. And it's partly because of this continued reliance on agriculture that Eastern Slavonia remains one of the poorer regions of Croatia. With the population having rapidly declined due to emigration and the loss of various industries, it might seem like Osijek and its surroundings are on the decline, or a decaying relic from a more prosperous past. But as this video will show, there's way more to Osijek and its surroundings today than loss and decline. In fact, Osijek-Baranja is one of Croatia's fastest growing inland tourist destinations, breaking new records in the number of tourist arrivals each year since the end of COVID-19 restrictions. Especially with Central and Eastern Europeans on their way to the Adriatic coast, more and more people are realizing that a stop in Osijek and its wider county is worth it for a number of reasons. One of the first features that makes the region unique are its rivers. Croatia's Slavonian region is bordered by 3 major rivers, the Danube, the Sava, and the Drava. While the Sava River is important for southern Slavonia, the Drava and Danube rivers are the most important for eastern Slavonia. Osijek has the long-term nickname of Grad na Dravi, or the city on the Drava. And while the nearby Danube's significance for Central Europe can't really be overstated, the lesser-known Drava has its own unique characteristics and history that have made it an important source of water, food, culture, and transportation for Eastern Slavonia. The pedestrian bridge, built in 1981, has come to serve as an important symbol for the city's relationship with its major river, and today, it's one of the most recognizable structures in the entire region. You can take the bridge to the eastern, less developed side of Osijek, where there's a zoo, beaches, and a promenade. Or you can use it as a vantage point for some impressive views of the city and its architecture. The river itself flows into the Danube southeast of Osijek near the town of Almash, and today it's one of the most heavily exploited rivers in Europe, especially in the north. But around Osijek and immediately south of the city on its path towards the Danube confluence, the Drava River is surrounded by forested wetlands and is impressively underdeveloped, so that kayakers, fishers, and boaters can get the sense that they're far away from the industry and urbanization that make up the city's core. while it's an impressive natural sight, the river can be perilous and has its fair share of myth among locals, having claimed countless lives throughout the centuries with its unpredictable currents. From pagan times all the way up to the modern period, oral tradition among the people who lived along the Drava established the river as home to mystical creatures like the vile or nymphs, and other cryptids and monsters like the vodenjak, a hairy creature that would pull unsuspecting people by the river down into its watery lair, which quite clearly serves as a warning for the river's dangerous currents. But this doesn't stop people from using the river for transportation, sport, and even bathing in the summer. And dangerous or not, the river is part of the region known as the Amazon of Europe, a UNESCO World Heritage super region that also includes the Mur and Danube rivers, a broader area representing one of the largest and last remaining wetlands in Europe. Part of the Amazon of Europe is Osijek-Baranja's nature park, Kopacki. Standing right between the Danube and Drava rivers, Kopacki is one of the most well-preserved wetlands in all of Europe and is under various degrees of protection. For the most part, people are free to explore the impressive swamps on foot or by bike, while boat rides are put on by guided tours. I would, however, recommend doing your own hike unguided. That way you can experience the swampy forests and walk on the numerous bridges over ponds and lakes full of rare endemic plants and animals. Kopacki has been under protection since 1967, making it one of Croatia's oldest protected parks. One of the most infamous of all the endemic species living in the floodplains around Kopacki are, of course, mosquitoes. Annual invasions of millions of these little bloodsuckers in the warm and humid summer months are a fact of life for people in Osijek-Baranja, and the local government requested over €1 million for combating mosquitoes in 2023. Despite the annoying mosquito attacks throughout the summer, people have made the best of it, sometimes even embracing the mosquito as a symbol for the Osijek region. Just be sure to bring some spray if you visit during the summer. Now, it's easy to get lost in all the ecological beauty of the Baranja region and its wetlands and floodplains. But the Drava River has also made the region and the city of Osijek a place of major strategic importance. As I mentioned, Osijek and Baranja's Slavonian flatness and its waterways have made the region susceptible to invasions and migrations, which has created a vibrant mix of cultures and heritage. From ancient Romans to the great Slavic migrations, Habsburgs and Ottoman Turks, to the World Wars and Croatian War of Independence, Osijek has been fought over by warring groups throughout much of its history. And it's this constant warfare that created one of Osijek's most recognizable landmarks, the Austro-Hungarian fortress/old town called Tvrdja, which remains one of the most well-preserved Baroque-era complexes in all of Europe. Since the Habsburg-Ottoman Wars over 300 years ago, Tvrdja has gone through lots of changes as the city of Osijek expanded around it. But even after the destruction that comes with time and an often violent history, the fortress walls still stand proud on the banks of the Drava, protecting the old early modern town inside it, which is today undergoing yet another transformation. Cafes, bars, and restaurants seem to foreshadow the almost inevitable expansion of tourism in this important part of Southeast Europe. Today's Tvrdja is also a center of cultural and historical significance, housing the city's state archive, Museum of Slavonia, and it's home to the Strossmayer University, an academic hub of eastern Croatia. The fortress also stretches across to the other side of the river, where a series of catacomb-like structures known locally as katakombe represent the northernmost part of the fortress complex. And while they seem like they're abandoned, they're actually open to the public and make for a pretty cool stroll on a hot day. But it isn't just Tvrđa that attests to the region's strategic importance and its tumultuous history. Lots of impressive medieval, early modern, and Baroque fortress ruins can be found throughout the region, with the Erdut fortress standing at the easternmost edge of Osijek-Baranja, being one of the best preserved and coolest. Overlooking the Danube and directly facing the Serbian border, the Erdut fortress, also known as the Castle on the Hill, was most likely built in the 14th century and was later used by the Hungarian monarchy to fend off Ottoman invasions from the east. And from the castle, you can easily walk down to the banks of the Danube, which has marked the frontier of numerous wars. But it should be remembered that the river has also been an important source of connection, fostering trade as well as providing a lifeline of water and hydropower to Central and Southeast Europe, as well as a place to cool off in the summer humidity. And the combination of Europe's second biggest river, heavily forested land, and early modern fortress ruins is pretty hard to beat. Now, you don't need to look too far into the past to get a sense of Osijek's tumultuous history. During Croatia's war for independence in the 1990s, Osijek and Baranja were on the front lines. With the nearby city of Vukovar falling in 1991, the city was heavily bombarded during the Battle of Osijek, during which around 800 people were killed and thousands of others forced to flee. But during the siege, Osijek was able to hold out, earning itself the nickname Nepokoreni grad, the Unconquered City. While several buildings in the city remain scarred and continue to bear painful, though important reminders of the bombardment, the most iconic symbol of the city's role in the war is in the monument of a little red car called a ficho running over a tank, which is a satire of the famous video of a Yugoslav People's Army tank running over a little red ficho on the streets of Osijek in 1991. But don't think that Osijek's strategic importance is only related to war. It's also ensured a unique blend of cultures that have produced their own particular Slavonian flavor. Lots of things have been historically grown in this major agricultural region, from plums to hazelnuts and peppers. But it's wine and meat that continue to keep Osijek and Baranja on the map of culinary and wine tourism. Dried meats like prosciutto and kulen, or cured pork sausages, are the meat lovers' symbol of Slavonia. The local dish known as fish paprikaš is another important part of the region's culinary identity. While it shares similarities with a Hungarian dish, evidence of cultural meshing that has occurred in the region for centuries, in Croatia, fish paprikaš represents what is perhaps Osijek-Baranja's most important and common family meal. A large cauldron is filled with stew made up of onions, garlic, chili peppers, and spices, the most important of which is paprika. Boils over a furnace with chunks of local freshwater fish like catfish and carp. Then, after being suspended over the fire for a couple of hours, it's served by pouring the stew over homemade egg noodles, followed by a thick chunk of the fish. And if it's made properly, it has a kick, but isn't too spicy. Now, Eastern Slavonia prides itself on its meat products, so if you're a vegetarian like me, it could be hard to find any options that are specific to the region. You can always go for the Balkan classic burek, a flaky dough pastry that can be filled with cheese and spinach or even potatoes. And there's good burek in Osijek, just like there is throughout all of Southeast Europe. There's also šopska salata, which is actually a southern Balkan dish of sliced tomatoes, cucumber, and feta cheese, but you can find it pretty much anywhere. Or, if nothing else, there's always good homemade noodles and pastas. But another option might be pizza. There's a specific Slavonian pizza that is served with local peppers, sliced kulen, and cream. But I've come to find that Croatia in general has some of Europe's best pizza, and even in Osijek, which is about as far away from the Croatian border with Italy as you can get, really good pizza isn't hard to find. Like at the restaurant El Paso, which offers pizza and a mix of local and international dishes on a large boat docked in the city's main port. It might seem like a tourist trap at first, But with Osijek mostly escaping the over-tourism of the seaside, it actually has really good food for a decent price and gives you a cool view of the river. Either way, whether you're a fan of Osijek and Baranja's rich meat heritage or a vegetarian, Slavonia has long been known as the breadbasket of Croatia. And Baranja is also known as a wine hub, and there are multiple vineyards and wine cellars to explore if you're a wino. Osijek also has its own beer called Osiječko, which claims the right to call itself Croatia's first brewery, founded all the way back in 1697, and with its oldest recipe dating back to 1667. While partaking in all of Osijek's food and drink goodies, when you get the chance, be sure to take in the region's most well-known style of folk music, played by the tamburica, a mandolin-like instrument that usually features fast tremolo picking. While tamburica can also be found throughout Croatia and in Serbia and Hungary, Osijek has a special place in the history of the musical instrument and style, as it's said that the first amateur tamburica orchestra was held in the city in the middle of the 19th century, led by composer Pajo Kolarić. Now, if you want something more modern, do yourself a favor and check out the legendary Osijek punk rock band Debeli Predsjednik, or Fat President, who are one of the most well-known punk bands in the entire former Yugoslavia. Their song Legica has even become one of the main opening chants at all home games for Osijek's professional soccer team, NK Osijek, at Opus Arena. Opus Arena, in fact, is one of Croatia's largest and newest sports stadiums, and it's fitting for the city on the Drava as it sits right on the bank of the river. This brings up one final point about Osijek and Eastern Slavonia's flatness. The topography is highly conducive to physical activities and sports from biking to kayaking, and well, whatever else you're into. In fact, Osijek has an impressive promenade that follows along the river right through the city and beyond, and has separate paths for pedestrians and cyclists. Most of this promenade is already completed, and you can easily explore a big part of the city and its surroundings by following it. And when it's complete, at 12 kilometers, it should be one of Europe's longest continuous riverfront promenades. If you're more hardcore than that, you can bike for miles and miles throughout Baranja and visit some of its most prominent wineries and restaurants in villages like Karanac, a model ethno-village specializing in traditional agricultural products. But also important for Osijek's role as an active town, each summer Croatia's largest skate park, which is adjacent to the city beaches and catacombs, hosts the Pannonian Challenge Extreme Sports Competition, which I unfortunately haven't been able to attend myself, but thankfully, when the competition isn't being held, the park is free and open to the public. And if you're lucky enough, you can skate, bike, scoot, or rollerblade in the park on a day when there is no one else but you, so only the river and its flora and fauna, and maybe even a vodenjak or a vila, can laugh at you when you fall. Croatia's official tourism slogan used to be "the Mediterranean as it once was," which was very seaside-centric and contributed to the misconception that all of Croatia is just one big coastline. So I think we could all admit that in the past, they did a pretty poor job representing the entire country, which is simultaneously Mediterranean, Balkan, Southeast, and Central European. And here in Eastern Slavonia, in the Osijek-Baranja region, which is as far from the seaside as Croatia gets, we can see that there's a whole different blend of environment and culture that you just can't find in the coastal part of the country. While it shares many features with parts of the countries it borders, it's produced its own flavor, sound, and look that can only be found here, in the other part of Croatia.